Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to this review of Day 2 of the final pre-season test for the 2026 Formula 1 season. Another just atypical day of testing. The lap times have got quicker, which is good to see. We've got a lot more teams pushing a bit harder, let's say, than they were yesterday, and obviously in the first test last week. The limit is starting to... I wouldn't say be found, but they're getting closer to it. Most of the teams, anyway, are getting closer to it. So, yeah, good to see. Yeah, it was very interesting to see certain lap times towards the final hour or so of the day's running. But yeah, other than that, it was, like I said, just a typical day of running. Today's test, other than, once again, Aston Martin having yet another breakdown and yet another gearbox issue, which is what caused Lance Stroll to spin on day one of this second test. So, yeah, Aston Martin just have so many issues. I don't even know where to start, really, with them. And, yeah, not a good day for them at all. Alonso ended up parking up, I think, an hour or so into the afternoon session. So, ended up missing the rest of the day's action, which, yeah, not good for Aston Martin. But yeah, all the other teams pushed hard. I think almost, or yeah, actually, I think, I don't know, I'm not sure if it was all of the rest of the teams. Maybe there was one or two that didn't quite, do their fastest lap time of testing so far, but it felt like almost everyone was doing their fastest lap times of testing so far. So we are definitely getting pretty close to what will be the absolute best pace of these cars around this track. Yeah, we are still, quite a bit away from, the level they'll be at this track probably when we come here in April, but we're not a million miles away, put it that way. But yeah, obviously in this stream, we'll go through what we did yesterday. We'll look at the lap times and we'll look at the best times per team for all 11 teams, of course. Obviously, we'll do a roundup of all the teams and quickly just round up, how their day went and how things are looking going into the final day of testing, which, of course, is tomorrow. And also, and little added bit tonight we're going to be doing is discussing the pecking order in terms of predicting what I think the pecking order is going into the first Grand Prix. We will be getting into that in this stream in not too long from now. So, yeah, we'll get into that soon enough. Before, though, I get into the usual stuff. Hello to all you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Good to see you all. And, yeah, no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from, hope you're all doing as well as possible, given whatever's going on in your part of the world or just in your life in general. And yeah, hope you can join me tonight in being part of the discussion of, pre-season testing in 2026 and just where the teams are at. There is a poll, as usual, running in the chat. And I've asked you guys, who do you... Sorry, let me do that again. Who do you think will win the first Grand Prix in Australia in 2 weeks from now? Will it be Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, or Ferrari? Let me know, out of those four teams, who do you think wins the first race? In my view, it's probably going to be Mercedes. But let me know if you think different, whether you think, maybe we'll have a different winner than I expect, and maybe, a surprise winner. Let me know in that poll, and let me know in the live chat in general your thoughts about the field, and let me know in the chat what do you think the pecking order is. You don't have to give me the whole what you think the pecking order is for the whole field, but at least for the top teams, the top four teams, where do you think they're at? Who do you think has the quickest car? And then second, third, fourth, let me know in the chat and we'll see what you guys have to say. And yeah, I'll let you guys know my pecking order in this stream and in this review this evening. But yeah, in terms of today's testing, again, it was just a usual day. The lap times did improve quite a bit. I think they were 0.6 of a second quicker today than they were yesterday in terms of the best lap time of the session. So that's good to see. I did say last night that I hoped we would see them dip into the 132s, and they did. They did a 132.8, did the top two in today's session. So tomorrow, I reckon we will get a mid 132 lap time. Possibly, though, I think we could see a low 1 minute 32, which would be pretty quick for pre-season testing if they were to do like a 32.1 or a 32.2. If anyone can do it, I'd love to see if that is possible, or if any of the teams will bother, trying to go for that. So we'll see tomorrow. But yeah, they are going pretty quick at this point. I don't think there is an absolute ton of sandbagging going on throughout the field. I think at this point, I think pretty much all the teams except probably Aston Martin, because of their issues, are pretty much on similar fuel loads and using similar engine modes at this point. Not the same fuel load and the same engine mode, of course. There are still some differences, but I don't think there are, certain teams who are massively sandbagging compared to others. I don't believe that at this point. It is, really starting to shape up, let's say, the field going into this season. And of course, tomorrow we will find out possibly a bit extra about these 2026 cars and whether, certain teams actually have a lot more pace than we expected. And hopefully, if certain teams do have a lot more pace than we expect, hopefully they'll show that tomorrow to at least get us excited for the first Grand Prix in a couple weeks' time. Anyway, let's get on to the results, firstly, of the second day of the final test. And again, these are the best lap times per team. So the best lap time overall and the best lap time of testing so far, a 1:32.803 from Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, half a tenth quicker than Piastri in the McLaren. Mercedes, very quick towards the end of the session. And I had a look at some top speed data from the session, and Antonelli at the highest was doing about 325 kilometers an hour down the main pit straight, when Piastri was doing about 10 kilometers an hour more. Whether those top speeds were done, though, on their best laps, I don't know. But it does point to Mercedes being the quickest, but even quicker than what this is showing. They're not miles ahead of McLaren, but they are definitely quicker than half a tenth ahead of McLaren. I think that is for sure. Max Verstappen third. Verstappen did some good laps a couple hours before the end of the session, then did a good, I would say, race run. Red Bull, though, shown a lot more today, which is what I was hoping, but still lagging just that few tenths of a second, I think, behind Mercedes. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident at this point that Red Bull are going to start the season definitely comfortably behind Mercedes. Again, not to the point where they're a second a lap off the pace, but yeah, Mercedes have definitely got a better car than them. I don't have any doubt about that at this point. Lewis Hamilton in fourth. Ferrari didn't push as hard today as I was hoping they would. They are quicker than what they showed in today's running. I do think they are pretty much on the same pace as Red Bull. And I do believe also that Red Bull and Ferrari are a bit closer to McLaren than what was shown in today's running. So, yeah, the gap between McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari is not as big as it appears to be there. But yeah, Ferrari, again, they look better than they did this time last year in testing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But still, I don't think they are at a point where we can call them contenders to win races. I just really don't think they're in a position like that, to be honest. And I know that, we've seen with the practice starts in testing, they're having these great starts. That's great. But can you then hang on to the lead for, 50, 60 laps with a car that's potentially, half a second a lap slower than, say, the Mercedes? I'm not sure they can. So, yeah, Ferrari, again, better position than they were in a year ago, but still not anything to get seriously hyped over. I really believe that with Ferrari. And then Franco Colapinto, fifth for Alpine. Colapinto did that lap on the C5 compound at the very end of the session. Just about a tenth ahead of Nico Hulkenberg in the Audi, who did his time on the C4. We have to remember, though, that Pierre Gasly, Colapinto's teammate, normally is a few tenths of a second quicker than Colapinto. So the Alpine is definitely a bit quicker than what Colapinto did today. Even though Colapinto, got to say, is still looking decent in that car. And at this point, I think we have to just say, it's so clear at this point, the Alpine is the best midfield car. Not by a mile. It's, it's still close relatively with other teams, but I just don't see another midfield team right now who are, as good as them. Audi, Haas, teams like that, again, they're not a million miles away, but yeah, Alpine, I'm pretty confident have got the best midfield car. Audi, though, this was really, with Audi, the first day of testing where they really have shown us a lot more of what they've got performance-wise. Pretty good pace. What was it? A 1:33.9, I believe, on the C4 compound. That is a pretty decent lap time on that compound. So yeah, the Audi car is good. It's not, as good as, or, it's not good enough to be fighting at the front of the field. It's not the best midfield car, but it's a good midfield car. I don't think I have any doubt about that at this point. In terms of where exactly it's going to be in the midfield, still difficult to say exactly. Obviously, I've, gone with a predicted pecking order, which I'll show in a moment. But yeah, I think they've got a good midfield car, at least to start the season, and then hopefully as the season goes on, they'll improve. Esteban Ocon then 7th. Haas, yeah, decent car they've got. They've got a car that is pretty much as quick as last year's car, just smack bang in the middle of the midfield. Ocon doing some good times towards the end of the session. Then you got a few tenths of a second drop off to Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls. Racing Bulls car about as slow or as quick, no matter, what you want to say. It's pretty much where I thought it was going to be for this season. They're not back markers, but they're not, I don't think they're quick enough to score points in the car they've got. They're going to need some upgrades, I think, going forward into the first few races. One team, though, that in my mind at least took a real step back today was Williams. Albon, that lap time he did, only slightly slower than Lawson, was on the C5 compound when Lawson was on a step harder compound. Williams not having a great showing today. Albon, that lap time of his was a 1:34.5, I believe, which is quicker than they went yesterday. Yesterday they did a 1:34. 1:35.0, I think they did. So yeah, half a second quicker on a tyre that should be around half a second quicker. But yeah, Williams, I just don't have as good of a feeling about them as I did yesterday once, a lot of the other midfield teams started to show a lot more of their low fuel pace. And also, I have heard some negative things about Williams when watching testing today from the F1 TV people. I think Lawrence Barretto was talking about how the Williams is still quite a bit overweight. Even though Williams claim it's only a couple kilos overweight, which I thought at the time was bullshit because obviously they're not going to admit how far overweight they are. Apparently that still is an issue for the Williams team. So yeah, I've soured a bit on Williams after today. And then you've got Sergio Perez in the Cadillac. That's Cadillac's quickest lap time of testing so far. A 1:35.3, I think it is. A decent lap time. I mean, yeah, they are still quite far off the midfield teams ahead of them, like Racing Bulls and Williams and Haas. But that's to be expected. We don't expect them to be fighting for points in Melbourne. As the season goes on, they will improve quite a bit. I have no doubt about that. But yeah, I think Cadillac, whilst they've definitely not got a fast car, it's not, it's not like a 2015 Marussia or say the Williams car in 2019. It's not that level of bad. It's a bit better than that. If I was to compare it to a backmarker car of recent times, I would say it feels a lot more like the Williams in 2022, I think it was, where that car was consistently quite far off the pace of the midfield. Occasionally, it would be up there fighting other cars, but it was quite rare. I think the closest comparison I can compare it to, though, is the Manor car, the Manor Marussia car of 2016, the one where Pascal Wehrlein scored a point in Austria, that car. That is, I would say, the closest thing, or the closest back marker I can compare this Cadillac car to. That Manor was slow. They were only really competitive because they had a monster engine and the straight line speed was way overpowered. But in terms of their pace relative to, say, the front of the midfield, it was about the same as I'd say it is now, but for Cadillac compared to, say, Alpine, who are probably at the front of the midfield. So, yeah, Cadillac, I think they'll be fine. I think by the end of the season, they'll be in a decent position. I still think they will score points at some point because I think the opportunity will present itself. And they've got two experienced drivers who can, on a rainy day or a chaotic day, weave their way through the chaos. And then, 11th best team today, Fernando Alonso. Absolutely awful day for Aston Martin. Lapping quite a bit slower, obviously, than they did yesterday. But, of course, yesterday, they were able to get back out on track, I believe, towards the end of the session when Alonso today again broke down about 3.5 hours before the end, and then wasn't able to get out again. When if he had stayed out or was able to do running in the latter part of the session, I'm sure Alonso would have been doing a lap time probably 2.5 to 3 seconds quicker than what he did in the morning session. So yeah, Aston Martin, they are definitely quicker than Cadillac. I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind. As long as they're on track and running at whatever for them is full performance, they are quicker than Cadillac. No doubt about it. In terms of where they are, though, compared to teams like Williams and Racing Bulls, it's still too hard to say. I would still, if you absolutely forced me to say where I think Aston Martin are, and obviously I did a graphic, which I'll show in a minute, of where I think they are, then yeah, I'd say probably 10th quickest if you absolutely force me to an answer. So yeah, still not great for Aston Martin. But yeah, lap time wise, 1:32.8, the fastest lap times we've got to. Hopefully tomorrow they can get to at least a mid 132 or a low 132, I think would be very good. A very good pace with these cars, considering that they are supposed to be, I think, generally 2 to 3 seconds off the pace of last year's cars. Considering this is testing and, what do you call it? And obviously the cars are not running at full pelt like they will be at this particular track in April. If they were to do a low 132, that would only be like 2.5 seconds off the pace of pole position at this track from last year. So, yeah, I think if they could do a low 132, that would be really quite strong and show that even though, yeah, these cars are slower, it's not as slow as people, I think, expected it to be. So that's a positive, I would say, with these cars. And yeah, those are the best times per team. Now, I'll just go back to this. And by the way, one thing I wanted to say was apologies about the pictures on your screen. These are the same pictures I had on the screen last night. I wasn't able to get pictures of today's cars ready for the stream, but I will, for tomorrow's watch along, have pictures from today on stream, so don't worry about that. And just a reminder, I will be doing a watch along tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time for the final 2 hours of pre-season testing. So if you're able to, come watch along the final couple hours of testing. If you're not able to watch the session, but you want to listen along, to listen to me take you through the final couple hours of testing and also listen to the updates of what's going on, then yeah, make sure to tune in for that. Again, tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time. Make sure to join me for that. And yeah, can't wait to do that tomorrow. First watch along it'll be of the year. Quickly as well, make sure to smash the like button. As usual, it does help the channel. So yeah, make sure to do that below. Anyway, let's just quickly touch on what I think the pecking order is currently, as we go into the final day of pre-season testing. Now, I must add, this is not my final prediction for what I think the pecking order is. I will make my final assessment as to what the pecking order is in about a week from now when I do a video reviewing pre-season testing where we'll go through all of the key data and all the talking points essentially. So yeah, I will leave my absolutely final prediction as to what the pecking order is until then. But this is just what I think the pecking order is now going into the final day of testing. Because of course tomorrow, 2 or 3 teams could just suddenly turn up the wick and show us a load of pace that we didn't think they had. And obviously that then changes things round. Because obviously with new information, you have to adjust your viewpoint. So, yeah, this is what I think the pecking order is as of now going into the final day of testing. So, Mercedes, I'm still pretty confident I've got the fastest car. In terms of the gap between them and McLaren, who I think are just about second quickest, I'd say it's probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second between Mercedes and McLaren. I'm not sure, exactly what the gap is between those two teams, which is why I say 2 to 3 tenths of a second. At certain tracks, it might be more. Certain tracks, it might be less. We'll have to see. In Melbourne, though I am pretty confident that Mercedes will be just that extra third of a second quicker than McLaren. And yeah, Mercedes, I just think in terms of the fundamental chassis, with also obviously having the power unit they've got, the works engine, it's just as a overall machine, just that little bit extra better than the McLaren. The McLaren has its qualities. In terms of downforce, I think the McLaren has got plenty. It's, I think, in terms of the handling, a good car. But they just don't have, I think, fundamentally as much grip through all types of corners like the Mercedes does. And obviously the Mercedes team being the works team, in terms of that, engine to customer relationship, I think that helps Mercedes as well by a slight bit of lap time. So yeah, Mercedes, I think, have got the fastest car. Again, by about a third of a second. McLaren, I think, then are second quickest. Just want to say, though, because I know McLaren have been struggling in testing with their long run pace, this pecking order is based on what I think the pace is over qualifying. In terms of the race pace, we'll have to see when we get to the first couple Grand Prix in Australia and China. But in terms of single lap pace, I think McLaren are just about ahead of Red Bull. And Red Bull and Ferrari, I think, are pretty much on the same pace. The reason I've gone with Red Bull ahead of Ferrari is because I just think it's a slightly safer bet to have Red Bull ahead of Ferrari. But they are, like I said, I think pretty much on identical pace. But I think both Red Bull and Ferrari are about a tenth, maybe 2/10 at most, slower than McLaren. I think the reason McLaren, I think, are quicker over a single lap compared to Red Bull and Ferrari is purely just having better grip. The Ferrari, I would say, is closer to the McLaren in terms of downforce levels. The Red Bull is very quick in a straight line with its, obviously, they've got their own powertrain. They are very quick in a straight line, but Red Bull, where they are doing well down the straights, they're then giving away a bit too much in the corners, and that's what's costing them that slight bit extra time compared to McLaren, but that's what's really costing them compared to Mercedes, who have, I think, equally as good of a car in basically all facets. So, yeah, that's why I've got McLaren ahead of Red Bull and Ferrari for the moment. But obviously, Bahrain is a power track. When we get to, say, the second Grand Prix of the season in Shanghai, which is a real high downforce track, even though I know you've got that very long back straight. At that track, I would expect to see Red Bull not quite as competitive, but then when we come to a track like this, or even Suzuka, which is a bit more high speed, that's where then the Red Bull will be a bit better, compared to how they'll be, like I said, at a track like Shanghai. So in terms of who is second, third, and fourth quickest, it's going to ebb and flow, I think, quite a lot in the first few races. But I think what will be consistent most of the time is that Mercedes have the best car. Again, not by an absolute country mile. They will win some races pretty comfortably, but it's not going to be by, 40 seconds or anything like that. They're not that quick, I don't think, at least. But yeah, the battle for second and third and fourth quickest is really where it's going to be at most of the time in the early part of the season. And then once we start getting into the European season, when we get upgrade packages coming for the big teams, that's when you can expect, hopefully, especially teams like Red Bull and Ferrari, to close the gap and really make things exciting in 2026. But yeah, in terms of the championship, Mercedes, I think, are the clear favourites at this point. Constructors' Championship, definitely the clear favourites because they've got a pretty strong driver lineup. Whether Kimi Antonelli will improve enough to be as competitive as his teammate George Russell, we'll have to see. I hope he is, because even if the Mercedes are too competitive for everyone else, at least we'll still get a good fight for the Drivers' Championship. But yeah, if you were to tell me now that George Russell is going to win the Drivers' Championship and Mercedes are going to relatively comfortably win the Constructors' Championship, I would not be surprised by that in any shape whatsoever. So, yeah, Mercedes for me, the clear favourites for 2026. Into the midfield, though, Alpine, I've seen enough. I think they've got the best midfield car, but it is not by that much. I think maybe a couple tenths is what the gap is between them and Audi, who I think are sixth best. Audi really did impress me today. They've definitely got a good midfield car, good base to start from. Because, of course, if you don't know, obviously not only is it Audi's first venture into Formula One this year, but they are projecting to, or the aim for them, for their project, is to be world champions in 2030, which is in, 4 seasons from now? And if, this is where they're starting from, it's a pretty good base. Remember, McLaren were even slower than where Audi probably are at now, back in 2023. And then look, a year and a half later, McLaren were champions. So it's not impossible at all, especially with the regulations we've got in terms of the lower down you finish on the championship, you get more wind tunnel time. So Audi hopefully will make good use of that in the first half of this year. Haas then, I think, a 7th. I think pretty comfortably 7th. Ferrari engine is good enough for them to be in that position, and the Haas car aerodynamically looks good. And then Williams, I think, are just about ahead of Racing Bulls. It is very close, I think, between those two teams, but I'm going to go Williams ahead purely because I think the Mercedes engine is, strong enough to put them in that position. And I think the car as well, I think we have to remember that, if the Williams car is a bit more overweight than, say, the Racing Bulls car, that means that there is more potential to be found in that Williams that is there, but they just need to find it by obviously shedding the weight in whatever way they can. So, yeah, I think Williams, I'd say 8th quickest, which is obviously not where they want to be. They were 5th quickest team last year. But yeah, 8th quickest that's, I think, where they are, unfortunately for them. Racing Bulls 9th. Racing Bulls are still, they're going to be competitive enough to fight with teams like Williams and Haas, maybe Audi, at certain points early in the season. But yeah, I don't think they've got a fast enough car at the moment, though, to where I can say they are going to be fighting for points as regularly as they were last year. Saying that, I was wrong on them this time last year. Maybe I'll be wrong again. I hope I am. But I just don't get the feeling that they've got a points, like a consistent point scoring car like they did last year. And then 10th, I think safe bet, you've got to say Aston Martin. Whether they've got way more performance in that car still to be unlocked, we'll have to see as the season goes on. But yeah, I think they are smack bang in the middle of Racing Bulls and then obviously Cadillac, the slowest team. And the reason Cadillac are the slowest team is a couple reasons. One, they have the least amount of downforce of any team, which is not a surprise. They're a new team. But also, even though the Ferrari engine is performing well in terms of reliability, and performance-wise, it's not too bad, the Ferrari engine is still not as good performance-wise as the Mercedes power units or the Red Bull powertrains, or even possibly the Audi. We haven't quite seen a good enough comparison between those two as of yet. Obviously, when we get into the season for proper, we'll get to see properly how those power units are performing. So yeah, that extra, 2-3 tenths they're losing on the engine side is probably not helping either. But yeah, obviously Cadillac also have quite clearly the least amount of downforce. So yeah, it's not surprised that Cadillac are very likely the slowest team on the grid. But yeah, that's what I think the pecking order is currently. Like I said, tomorrow maybe we'll get Ferrari suddenly increase their pace by a second lap, and we'll all be screaming from the from the mountains that Ferrari are the fastest team on the grid. Who knows? But from what I've seen so far, this is what I think the pecking order is. One thing I will add is I didn't put the predicted gaps in next to the teams in terms of what I think the gap is from, say, Mercedes all the way down to Cadillac, because that is still, I think, pretty hard to predict. I think it's a lot easier to predict what the gap is from, say, Mercedes until Ferrari. I think the gap between Mercedes and Ferrari is probably about half a second. But in terms of the gap from McLaren to Ferrari, again, we're talking a tenth, maybe 2/10 at the absolute most. It is very close, I think, between those three teams. But Mercedes, I think, pretty clearly are a step ahead of McLaren and are the quickest team. But again, this is not 2014 levels of dominance from Mercedes or 2020 levels where they were a second lap quicker than the next team. It's not on that level at all. It's at best probably half of that gap that they had in those years. So, yeah, Mercedes, I'm pretty confident, are the team to beat in 2026. But let me know, guys, in the live chat, do you agree or disagree? Do you think Mercedes are the team to beat? Or do you think possibly Red Bull or Ferrari have got a bit more to show? And whether, do you think possibly that they do have an even faster car than what has been shown so far? Let me know in the live chat or the comment section. I'll see what you guys have to say. But before I get on to the live chat and any comments in there, let's just quickly do a roundup of all the teams. So McLaren, in terms of pace, a good day. Their race pace, they've had concerns over it, but from the data I saw today, it doesn't seem as bad as certain people are claiming. It's still not ideal, their race pace, but it's still at a good level, I would say. In terms of their single lap pace, it's good, but it's not as good as the Works Mercedes team. I'm pretty confident of that. But again, because of the not advantages, but because of the quality that their car has through the corners with their downforce, that is what is putting them ahead of Red Bull and Ferrari currently. So they've got a good base to start from, McLaren, a pretty good base. If they can upgrade their car as well as they have in the last couple years, there's no reason why McLaren cannot be World Championship material in 2026. To answer Rook's question about Piastri, I don't actually know what the issue was as to why he stopped at the end. But he did get going again, so it might have just been maybe just some malfunction with the electronics or something. I'm not quite sure exactly what it was. But yeah, McLaren, good car. We'll see tomorrow, probably further confirmation that they've got a good car. Again, though, not the fastest car. The fastest car belongs to the Works team, the Mercedes Works team. And today, towards the end of the session, once again proving that they do have the best car on the grid. And remember, Antonelli was the one who went quickest today. If the pace difference between Russell and Antonelli in Russell's favour remains the same this year as it was last year, then there's even more pace in that Mercedes potentially than what we've seen so far. And obviously Russell will be in the car tomorrow. He was in the car this morning, Russell, but I'm pretty sure he'll be doing the afternoon session, Will Russell, tomorrow. So we'll get to see, in the hands of Mercedes' best driver, a slight bit more what their potential is. But yeah, I think, as I said earlier, Mercedes, I think they've got the best car. Very reliable engine. The car looks very good in all types of corners. I don't think this Mercedes car really has any weaknesses. It is similar to the McLaren of last year, where the McLaren was the best car. It was not absolutely miles ahead to where they were, way over, half a minute or so winning races every week. I mean, there were a couple races like that, but it wasn't every week. But they were still the fastest team. That is what it feels like with Mercedes at the moment. They are comfortably, I think, the fastest team, but not to the point where they're going to be winning by half a minute or more every week. That's not quite the level of dominance I think we're going to see from Mercedes. So, yeah, fastest car and pretty much a perfect pre-season for Mercedes, and from their point of view, they'll hope it continues tomorrow. Red Bull, we found out a lot more today about their true performance, and what we found out is that they've got a quick car, quicker than I think a lot of people expected, including myself, for them to have at this point of this set of regulations and just in 2026 in general. But they definitely do not have a car that can fight for race wins out of the block. That is, I think, pretty clear at this point. I think it's a car that can fight for podiums. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But in terms of winning races on pure performance, I just don't think the Red Bull is quite there yet. I think you're going to have to wait a few races before they get to that point at best. The Red Bull powertrain is performing incredibly in terms of the reliability. The performance with their batteries is been brilliant as well. In terms of the competitive side of the engine, it's really as good as I think they could have possibly hoped for from their side. But again, through the corners, whether it's the slow speed or even the high speed corners, they are clearly losing an extra 2-3 tenths of a second to Mercedes and McLaren that they can't afford to lose, because remember, this is a power circuit. We're not going to be at power circuits every week. For example, when we go to Shanghai, second race of the season, that is a proper downforce type of circuit. They're going to probably struggle at that track if they can't figure out a way to improve in those areas. So yeah, it's not a bad car. No way it's a bad car. It's a podium contending car, I would say, the Red Bull, from what I've seen so far. But in terms of winning races on pure performance, I just don't think it's there at the moment. And again, you're probably going to have to wait until maybe the European season to see Red Bull at a point where they can, start to legitimately win races with a car that is actually quick enough to do so. And the final front-running team, Ferrari. And I think Ferrari are in a similar position. I think Ferrari, though, fundamentally have a slightly stronger package, I would say, than Red Bull. In terms of, the race pace looks good. The reliability is very good. Race starts look like they're going to be a strength of the Ferrari team this season. And the drivers sound more happy with what they've got compared to Max. Obviously, Max is going to have pretty high standards given what he's done in the last few years. So, yeah, Ferrari, again, they're in a better position now than they were a year ago, but not a significantly better position. They are still not on the level of Mercedes. They are not going to be fighting for race wins again on pure performance. I think they've got a car that is pretty much like the Red Bull. It's going to fight for podiums. It will get podiums, but they're going to need another big step forward, I think, in terms of upgrades if they're going to want to win races in 2026. So in terms of the, what they're starting this set of regulations with, it's a good base to start from, but they, again, simply just don't have enough pace to be fighting for race wins. And there's a couple reasons for that. I think, one, the car in terms of the handling, it's good, but it's not the best of what we've seen. But I think the biggest weakness is the engine in terms of performance. Again, it's been very reliable. You could argue it's the most reliable power unit on the grid, which is good for them. There will be a couple races where that comes in handy. But in terms of performance, I think they are lagging probably 2 to 3 tenths in performance terms to the Mercedes power units and probably the Red Bull powertrain as well. So, yeah, Ferrari, there is work to do if they want to get to that race-winning level. But, again, from an aerodynamic standpoint, they've got a pretty good base to start from. Hopefully they can improve at a decent rate of knots, and maybe towards the end of the season we'll see Ferrari start to properly fight for wins and maybe get a couple race wins on the board. I think the most positive I can be about Ferrari going into this season is they are, I think, quite a bit more likely to win a race this year than they were last year, because last year the base they had to start from at the start of the year just wasn't as good as what they've got this year. So, yeah, Ferrari looking decent, but again, in terms of are they going to be fighting for the win in Melbourne, I would say pretty confidently no. I don't think they will be. But I think at the second race in Shanghai, I think that's a race you'll see them be a bit more competitive than they will be in Melbourne. Because again, through the corners, the Ferrari seems to be a bit closer to the teams ahead of them than they do at high speed, down the straights. So, yeah, Ferrari looking decent, but again, not currently, I would say, at a race-winning level. Let's get into the midfield. Williams, yeah, I've soured on them a bit. Lap times today compared to the other midfield teams just didn't impress me. And from what I've heard as well about their overweight issue still being a problem, yeah, I just don't have a great feeling about Williams. Williams, I think, will be smack bang in the middle of the pack, which is what they've been really for the last 2-3 years, except really for last year. So, yeah, Williams, it's just not a great start they're going to have for 2026. Hopefully tomorrow they'll show a bit more pace. They do have, remember, a Mercedes engine, so it's not like they're failing because of the engine or anything. It's the chassis, the aero. It's just not anywhere near, I think, the level that they really expected to be at this point of 2026. So, yeah, disappointed by them. There's not really much more to say about Aston Martin. The only update I can give you is not only do they have issues with the power unit in terms of reliability and performance, and also the handling of the car, now they've got an issue with the gearbox, which is, I believe, built by Aston Martin themselves. I don't know if it's the first time they've built a gearbox for themselves, but yeah, they've got massive now gearbox problems. So, yeah, this team just has a litany of issues. Once they fix those issues, though, there is a lot more performances in this car than I think what we've seen so far. But, yeah, just I don't really know what else to say. Just a complete shit show going on at Aston Martin. Racing Bulls look okay. It feels like they're a bit more towards the rear of the midfield to me. The only plus for them is that they've got the Red Bull powertrain engine, so they will benefit from that this season. But in terms of where they're at right now, yeah, towards the rear of the midfield is where I think they are probably at. For Audi, showed a lot of good pace today. Looking at the top speed data, though, from the speed trap located on the pit straight during the session, Audi were at the top for top speed today. Now, again, whether they used that speed on their quick lap or not, I don't know. So clearly they were pushing a lot harder today, but the pace they showed was pretty good. It was a pretty good midfield pace. So, yeah, I am a lot more confident in Audi let's say, right now than I was 24 hours ago. So, yeah, looking good. And if they are around the 6th or even 7th best team on the grid, which is about the area I think they're at, that's a good base to start from for 2026. We'll see what they do tomorrow and whether they can build on the decent pace they've got. Haas, as I said earlier, look about as quick as they did last year compared to everyone else, which is actually a bit better than I thought they would be at this point. I thought they'd be one of the worst teams on the grid, but yeah, they look pretty good. Obviously, the Ferrari engine pretty reliable and still decently powered. So yeah, Haas look absolutely fine. Alpine, as I said earlier, I'm pretty confident at this point that they have the best midfield car. Only, though, in the hands of Pierre Gasly. We must remember that. Colapinto is still, I think, quite a bit worse than Pierre when it comes to just general pace. That might become an issue for Alpine this season, and maybe Colapinto will get replaced. We'll see. But yeah, Gasly, if he's in the car, I think this Alpine is the best midfield car. And I think in Melbourne, I think you'll see Gasly in the top 10 in qualifying and in the race if it's a dry weekend. But yeah, Alpine, if I was to say anyone who is the best midfield team, I can only think of this team. They've just built a fundamentally strong car. And obviously, Mercedes engine in the back helping quite a bit. And then finally, Cadillac. Again, as we said earlier, they've got the worst car, but I don't think they're as far away from the midfield as probably some people think. They've got the slowest car, but they are not embarrassingly slow. I don't think they're at that point of lack of performance. They will improve a lot during the season. I think they're still doing a pretty good job so far in testing in terms of the amount of laps they've done. Cadillac, completely new team. We have to remember that, this is not a team that's bought out a pre-existing team. That they're completely new. So you can't really have any real expectations for them to start off with. You'd expect them to get better as the year goes on, not just in terms of development, but the more they understand the car and understand how best to get the best out of the car and themselves, they should improve quite a bit during the season. But yeah, Cadillac at the minute, again, slowest car, but at least they've got a reliable car by the looks of it, reliable engine, and they should be, at the back of the field in Melbourne, but they're not going to be a million miles away like, say, Williams were in 2019 or anything like that. So there you go. There is your roundup of the teams. And before I go, let me just have a quick look at the chat. Rooks, good to see you. Good to see everyone. Saying, are Audi looking good with their own engine? Quite excited to see more engine manufacturers. Ford, Audi, eventually Cadillac. And do you think Ferrari might lose a few teams if Audi, etc., put engines on offer for customer teams? It depends on how Audi perform in the first, not just this year, but next year. Because if Audi do decide to have customers, it's not going to be until 2028 at the earliest. So yeah, I think from Ferrari's point of view, that might not be great. If Audi prove they've got a strong engine, maybe even stronger than Ferrari, then yeah, that might be a slight issue for them. But I don't think Ferrari are going to be that massively bothered if they lose, customers, because ultimately, obviously, they care about themselves, and as long as they know within themselves that they've got a good, reliable, and strong enough engine, I don't think they'll be that bothered about how many customers they've got. Obviously, Cadillac are a customer for this season and next season, and then in 2028, General Motors will come in with their own power unit, which I can't wait to see. And then you got Haas. Obviously, they've got a technical partnership now, Haas with Toyota. Whether that will become, an even bigger thing, maybe Toyota entering Formula One as a power unit manufacturer. That would be great to see. Who knows? But I want a potential customer deal to look out for. Not yet. Like I said, I don't think Audi are going to be doing any customer deals until probably the 2028 season at the earliest. But there has been talk from Mercedes that they are going to look at limiting the amount of customer teams they have. Obviously, if they've got the strongest engine, they're going to do that because they want to be ensuring that if they've got the strongest engine, that they are, the clear ones, main ones benefiting from that. And obviously having McLaren, who are a big team again, and a clear rival of them, also having the same power unit, that creates issues for for Mercedes in that aspect. So Mercedes might be looking to cut McLaren off as a customer. If McLaren do get cut off as a customer, though, I would not be surprised at all, especially if the Audi engine is competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if McLaren become a customer team of Audi. So keep your eyes out for that potential, partnership in, say, 2 to 3 years from now. I think one big thing, though, that will depend on, one big thing that we'll need to keep our eye on, which might mean that doesn't happen, that partnership, is how competitive the Audi team is. If Audi are progressing really well and it does look like they're going to be title contenders by 2030, then I think there's a pretty good chance they won't want McLaren as a customer. But if it looks like the Audi works team is not going to be in a position to fight for championships for, quite a number of years, then I think at that point you could see McLaren Audi be a partnership. So yeah, keep your eyes on that. That could be a partnership announced in the next couple years or so. Hello to G Walker. Good to see you. And yeah, as Rook's saying, Max, he did run today and was 0.3 off the pace. Max, as we know, he is going to get the most out of that Red Bull, and we saw it today, and yeah, just wasn't quite, I think, what a lot of Red Bull fans would have been hoping. The Red Bull still lagging a bit of lap time to I think Mercedes especially. But I think I've been live for about an hour, so I think I'll bring the stream to a close. Let me just bring this poll to a close. 19 votes on the question of who do you think will win the Australian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time, and 36% of you voted for Ferrari, interestingly. 32% for Mercedes, and then 16% for McLaren and Red Bull. Personally, I think Mercedes will win the first Grand Prix. If it's a dry weekend in Melbourne, I think Mercedes will win that first race, and I think it will be George Russell who wins the Australian Grand Prix. It'll be the first time he's won around that circuit. Russell has never actually finished. Has he finished on the podium in Melbourne? I think he did last year. But yeah, it's not been the greatest track for him in terms of history. But yeah, I think Russell will win the Australian Grand Prix. One thing I will say, though, is even though I think Mercedes will win the first race, in terms of qualifying, don't be surprised if we get a different team other than Mercedes on pole. I think qualifying this season is going to be very, very close. A lot of the time. I think the race is where you'll really see Mercedes show their, not dominance, but, their extra speed. But in terms of qualifying, I think it'll be a very close season. So, again, don't be surprised if we get McLaren, say, taking pole in Melbourne and then Mercedes winning the race. I could very much see a scenario like that. So, yeah. In terms of who wins, though, the first Grand Prix, like I said, I'm pretty confident it's going to be George Russell in the Mercedes car in a couple weeks' time. As I said earlier, make sure to join me tomorrow live at 2 p.m. UK time, as we're going to be doing a watch along for the final 2 hours of pre-season testing. So make sure to come along and join us for the final couple hours and see if any of the teams have, got any extra pace to show and whether they can, change our opinion. Sorry about that. Let me just clear my throat. Make sure to come along to see if any of the teams can change our opinion as to what is the real pecking order and who is actually quickest. So, make sure to come along to that tomorrow. If you can't watch the session, though, make sure to tune in and just listen along, and I'll keep you bang up to date with everything going on in the final couple hours of pre-season testing. And a reminder, because, obviously not everyone will be able to join us for the watch along tomorrow, I will be doing 2 videos on the channel in between the end of pre-season testing, which is tomorrow, and the first Grand Prix weekend in a couple weeks. Those 2 videos will be a review of pre-season testing, where I'll give my thoughts as to, based from a lot of the data and talk in the paddock, I'll give my thoughts as to who I think has the best car all the way down to the slowest. And again, it'll be a review really of a lot of the data, so make sure to come along to that video for that. And then the second video will be me doing my final season predictions, where I'll be locking in my predictions for the final time for who I think will win the championship, the drivers and the constructors. I may even do a prediction for who I think will win each race. We'll see. But yeah, make sure to come along to that video for that. And then, a few days after that second video, we'll be getting into the Australian Grand Prix itself. So yeah, that's the content you've got coming up in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, if you can, join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time for a watch along of the final couple hours of pre-season testing. And guys, until that watch along tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time, it has been me, Shazza HD. Goodbye.